it's just to jump straight into it. All right, we beat the clock by about 30 seconds. What's up, guys? My name is Stephen Michael Blackman. I'm your host, and joining me is Marcel. We got another interview today, so I know a lot of people are excited for it. We got the live chat, so guys, keep in mind when we're in an interview, we're going to do our best to post different questions. Our guest today, Mandy Moorehol, he's an author, comedian, musician, but without getting into too much detail as to how awesome he is, I'm just going to bring him on in and let's jump into it. All right. What's up, Mandy? How's it going, man?
What's up, guys? I was just tossing a Cerberus in the chat down there, you know? Hey, there we
Yeah,
go.
for sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, guys, go follow our guy for sure. So I got to ask the first question. Okay. Is that cool, Marcel?
Yeah. I haven't even thought of any yet. So I'll wait.
Well, I have a bunch in the chute ready to go, but
okay, good.
So tell me, I couldn't help but notice, I was watching a Lady Babylon episode not too long ago, and your name is Blue.
Oh yeah, I got a blue name, Lady Babylon. Yeah. I get to
you're in the belly of one of our beasts, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Chewie gave me a blaster, so I get to, there's some hustle, there's some ruckus in the chat. I get to blast them. You know what I mean? It's fun.
How long have you been doing the mods?
Oh shit! I mean, over a year now. It was always sort of like, there were a bunch of us in there, kind of alerting the mods to like, hey, there's some nefarious characters in here, yada yada yada. And then eventually, when Aroma went on lead on Danny Jones' show and blew up, it was just like the ruckus came out the woodwork, man. So they gave a bunch of us blasters, and we kind of just went in and started regulating and making sure that there's some people that can be very confused about exactly what's going on that show. You know what I mean? So, right. You start tossing Hail Satans and stuff, and people get the wrong idea. And like half of it's like, yeah, they're going to get the wrong idea. The point is to give them the wrong idea.
Yeah. I try to explain to people, I'm like, yo, you realize that there's a bunch of reasons why everybody does it and everybody says it. And, at the end of the day, don't take everybody so seriously. It's not quite what you think. Don't be that lady on Wife Swap that starts screaming, like they're entertaining stuff.
I mean, we're entertaining the people, you know what I mean? We're just having fun. And, my brother and I were in the studio probably about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when Lady Babylon started, and we were just doing recording sessions and writing sessions, and we would put his stuff on and just let it play in the background while we're working on stuff. And I wrote an entire little EP just listening to just doing studio sessions, listening to Amon. And I sent it to him. I was like, hey, just let you know, like, your channel inspired this whole thing and yada yada. And I've got a song called Orphic Vox, obviously that's where that's come, the influences, we're just wearing it right on our sleeves there, you know what I mean? Right. But yeah, and I'm not even like a part of any sort of like Amon fan club or anything like that. Amon is like is a peer in every single group that I've ever been involved in, you know what I mean? Like, right. anytime anybody sends me an invite to say, hey, do you want to work with us in this artist group or whatever, I'm like, as long as it's not hierarchical and it's not some kind of Amon fan club, yeah, I'll absolutely participate. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Amon and I are both part of the Carl Ruck fan club. So like, how can
talk about a book that changed it all, right?
Yeah, and that's how I know about him, because like I've been a fan of Carl Ruck for 15 years now, like a long ass time.
Decades, right?
It's been a long ass time since I've been a fan of Carl Ruck, and he has those series of videos where you can see Amon with his curly ass hair and all that. So like way back, you know what I mean?
Dude,
it's like,
yeah.
And then when Lady Babylon started, it was like, oh, that's that guy. Like that's the guy. And there's a textbook that Carl Ruck and Amon contributed a bunch of stuff to, and Ruck's like actually citing Amon in the footnotes and all that shit. So it's like, the disconnect between his academic arguments and his performance and satire on the show. It's like they're night and day. I don't know why it's so difficult for people to recognize it and go, oh, he's in character, and oh, he's in like multiple characters. There's multiple personas going on,
100%, yeah.
And like early on when he started, we were like, what if you do stuff like change the color, or change your shirt, or something like that, to just give people that are watching like a visual cue that like you're changing it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's just kind of standard.
That.
That's like standard like theater stuff. You know what I mean? And he's like very theatrical. He knows the theater in and out more, like better than probably anybody else that's on within his milieu that's doing any of this stuff on YouTube. Like, the reason it's so theatrical is because that's where the shit came from. So he's just
I try to explain to people growing up in a school of the arts, the theater is like the Olympics of the year, like every year you have the first semester's over, you have the holiday, the different plays that they do and stuff, and you get wrapped up in the whimsicalness, if you will, and the visual art kids like myself, we're the ones painting the backgrounds and stuff, getting the sets ready for everybody. But I don't know, somehow the theater always seems to steal the show all the time when it comes to everything. And I mean, everybody was obsessed with Hamlet. Like, I don't know, one small thing that I'll never forget is like, even though I was a visual arts student, you talk about Shakespeare all the time. And there's a lot of different symbology in Shakespeare that made a lot of the things that Lady Babylon was saying not such a shocker. It really wasn't, that bad. It wasn't that hard to accept when you watch Much Ado About Nothing, even if it's just the movie and not like the actual performance. And you hear Beatrice talking about her going down to hell and pretty much all the guys down there having their way with her, like it's like, it wasn't hard to hear some of the stuff that he was saying. But how long have you been, how long have you been a mod for him now?
Year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
We gave us all blasters a while ago.
My background when it came to the Entheogens and stuff was kind of how I ran across some of that material. I was writing a book, and we're going to talk. You have a book that you've released that I'm really interested in learning more about. I've already ordered it.
Yeah,
nice.
This is actually Snappy's promo copy, so I'm shipping this off.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, man! I got to get with y'all. I haven't published Witch Doctor Christianity. I got to cite all the pictures, but without the pictures, it's kind of I don't know. It's you might as well get the audio book. You might as well not even order it.
100%, yeah.
Right.
Too much stuff to have to break down.
The book looks bigger than I thought too. It looks like 1,000 pages.
You wanted to take up real estate on the shelf, you
like 800 pages or so.
Yeah. What did it come out to? 500 or 496. So it's actually, it's a periodical, right? We put a book out, a new book out, new volume of the book out every 73 days. So so it's 5 seasons. Yeah, 5 seasons in a year instead of 4 seasons. Comes out to 73 days. Yeah. So one. Sleep? I know, man. I know. The first third of the book is all contributions from our homies, right? So it's our chorus of frogs, right? So I don't have to write 1/3 of the book at all. It's that first third of it. So it's people who have essays. There's a piece of that's actually from my buddy's PhD dissertation on the concept of irony. There's poetry. There's people who contributed recipes. It's the chorus of frogs from Aristophanes, right? So we're making that reference to it. The very first third of the book is that we're joking about different ways to like explain it. And it was like, it's a 3-course meal. You have your appetizers, your main course, and your dessert, right? So we broke each book out into thirds, right? And the middle section, the main course, are all original essays that I wrote. And it's actually it's all an elaborate performance art piece, because the book, the essays, there's more to them than just like meets the eye. You have to actually read them and follow the flow and follow what I'm doing, because essentially what they are is, I'll come to my brother's studio, I'll eat a heroic dose of mushrooms and a grilled cheese sandwich. I'm lactose intolerant, right? So when you take mushrooms and you start getting that bubbly, like, I gotta take a mean shit, or I gotta puke.
Bubble guts,
you get that bubble gut, right? So that is my way of turning mushrooms and grilled cheese sandwiches into an entheogenic performance art, where I'm having violent diarrhea while tripping on a heroic dose of mushrooms on my brother's toilet, writing all of these essays. And that's how all of them are.
That's actually really cool, dude. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow.
we did what, four books like that, plus the Skeleton Key, which is the 5th volume, right? So the centerpiece, yeah, it's pretty great, man. And like it's
That's
really
something I would do.
it's really
I would
funny
do
when you recognize that it's like, oh, this is an elaborate like performance art piece, where I'm like, I'm just towing the line between like what is philosophical satire and satirical philosophy. Like we're asking those questions. We're going through all the entire canon of Western philosophy, starting the Greeks and even back before that, and going all the way through and going, hey, look at all these philosophers and wise people that were actually doing satire the whole goddamn time, right? Like there's so many of them. The list is massive, and unless you have read satire, you're never gonna like get most of the references. Like anybody who's a communist that has read Karl Marx and doesn't know Karl Marx is a satirist is, it's like, joke's on you, buddy. Like, how did you not catch all 7 references to Horace in volume 1 of Das Kapital? Like, unless you've read Horace,
Right.
you're never going to notice that, right? And most of Karl Marx's body of work is satirical. Like, he's making constant reference to Lucian, constant reference to Horace, constant reference to Juvenal. And unless you've read those things, you're never going to understand really what that guy's work is about. And then you end up with things like the goddamn USSR, like he's just being a bearded funny guy, and his PhD dissertation is absolutely brilliant. It's about like Epicureanism and shit. And his PhD dissertation advisor, the guy who gave him his PhD, he invented Jesus mythicism. So he's the first guy, like the guy that basically the idea that Jesus didn't exist, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Karl Marx's PhD advisor is the guy that invented that concept.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and he was also a satirist. Karl Marx and Bruno Bauer did satire together, right? They're famous for doing like street performances where one of them would dress up like a donkey and the other one would dress up like Dionysus or Jesus and ride the donkey into town, right? Dude, and it's like, this isn't the stuff that you really hear about, a guy like Karl Marx. You would never know that unless unless you're balls deep in Lucian. You're never going to catch his references to Lucian. Like,
people just want to shit on his political ideas or whatever.
Exactly. And and if you start shitting on somebody, on a satirist, it joke's on you. Like, you are the joke. Like, you are the joke at that point.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, that's funny.
I wanted to bring some more guys on to talk about Lucian, honestly, just because I feel like that, just like you mentioned, this is so funny because I was just talking about this like yesterday. I want somebody to come on to bust that topic open a little bit more and expand on that for sure, because I think everybody here, we're all obsessed with Greek now, right? Like, out of the blue in the last couple of years, just boom, it's taken off. And now
speak for yourself.
Everybody's trying to find other sources to compare it to. Like, we did a show one time where we had Homer and we had some passages from some different books, and we just showed some similarities and stuff, but now that everybody's kind of woken back up to it, I think that this is great. This is, if anything, it definitely makes different. You want to look for guys that majored in philosophy and look for little breadcrumbs they might be leaving behind. And I make the reference to the Coen brothers all the time with the little breadcrumbs they leave in some of their movies, even including Lady Killers. The Tom Hanks character is a classicist. You know what I'm saying? Like, like nobody was even paying attention to anything like that back when that movie was released. And now it's like,
no.
Now I'm looking for everything. Everyone's hiding this stuff in their different work and whatnot. But as the art kid, there was always something hidden in a lot of the art.
The best place and the first place to look if you're trying to find that stuff is the satire, right? There's a reason why satire was maintained and copied for so long, is because the Christians, instead of burning that stuff, they used it to say, look how bad the Greeks were, look how bad the Romans are, look how much better we are. So they maintained these texts that painted what they overcame in a bad light. That's why we have so much Lucian and Horace and Juvenal and Quintilian and all of these satirists throughout time. Why we still have Aristophanes. There's some, I'd say, really interesting thing. Galen, right? Galen has an entire book about the importance of comedy and satire for medicinal purposes, right? So he went through and found all of these. But the thing is that it's one of his missing texts. So he makes reference to it when he's talking about his bibliography.
That book.
It's Atlantis.
Exactly. So they burnt the book with Galen explaining all of the jokes.
Yeah.
Right. Explaining all of
the jokes on them now, right? Like you were saying, the jokes on
them. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. I haven't read much of the ancient stuff yet. I have PDFs of like Frogs and all of Lucian's work. I just find it hard to open up a PDF on my laptop and read it as opposed to having the physical book.
Man. Yo, I fall asleep with stuff pulled up all the time. Like when I had one of our buddies sent us I have to pull it up. It's on Neoniskos and stuff. And like I was reading that, I just kept falling asleep the whole time. But I think that we have this conversation going, and I think it's gonna increase how much of that knowledge, but thanks to some of the bigger box guys out there that have already started this, now it's really bringing a lot to light. My channel's got a lot of different things going on when it comes to like what we're handling here. We talk about, like our last guest, we talked a little bit about PTSD and entheogens, for that. And of course, we've all broken up the entheogens with the different breadcrumbs into the old Bacchic and Eleusinian, pieces spread, and that, and you see the different symbolism there, and so it's really sparked curiosity to the point where now we had a culture of like American Christian atheism that was rampant among middle schoolers throughout Caucasian America. And then all of a sudden now, it's like people are ordering Greek Bibles. That's what I'm talking about. Like taking it one notch above, taking it there and watching, all the documentaries that all of our buddies are making, that really breaks open, like, the different guys in the past and all the different languages that are written. And the back of my book reminds me of what the beginning of your book sounds like. Whereas towards the end of my book, I start citing a bunch of different books that I've read that stems to where these different thoughts and ideas kind of come from. And of course, it goes over everything. Entheogens, the ethnobiological aspect of the past. That is, if anything, if there was ever anything to suppress, that would definitely be it, for sure. But anyway, tell me more about your book. So you said that you have a copy of this coming out every 73 days.
Yeah. Actually, I'll send you let me send you the flyer for the contributions to the Chorus of Frogs over here on Discord real quick. So if any of your viewers or listeners or any of you guys want to contribute, art or anything like that.
Yeah, Marcel, we got to post it in the chat so people can click on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can just you can pull it up on the screen or whatever. I just send it to you in Discord.
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. So we don't need to do it right this second. I can vamp for it while you're doing that. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the book comes out every 73 days, and that's me paying homage to the Discordian calendar, which is Discordianism, the worshippers of Eris, the goddess of discord, strife, and confusion. Her, the one that started the Trojan War. So we worship her. So I'm paying homage to my Discordian family and basically creating a sub genre of Discordianism. I created my own satirical school of philosophy called the Cerberesian School of Cynicism. So we basically take what Diogenes was doing. Check that out. There you go.
Nice.
We're basically taking what Diogenes started by cynicism with philosophizing like a dog, and we philosophize like one single dog, which is Cerberus, the three-headed hellhound of the underworld. Right. So it's all about, what is the and Lucian actually invented Cerberus-ian cynicism. He's pretty explicit with that, and like dialogues with the dog, or dialogue with the gods, and philosophers for sale, and that sort of thing, where he takes his audience on a catabasis and all of that. He brings people up from the underworld, philosophers, and auctions them off. It's pretty rad stuff. But yeah, he's got one part in it where he says Diogenes basically says that cynics and Cerberus, they've always come hand in hand, they've always been together, they're inseparable, from the start. So it basically took that idea that Lucian had and kind of just ran with it. And basically how Lucian took his audience to the moon, I take my audience to Mars. So all of that stuff it's in there, but unless you've read a true story, you're not going to understand like what is all this like communication to Mars and back and forth through time going on here. It's like, oh well, just read Lucian. Lucian did it before I did, and so I'm kind of, he invented science fiction. The True Story is one of the very first science fiction books, and he's taken his audience on an odyssey from Earth to the moon, right? So he's doing the Odyssey, but he's taking his audience to the moon. I'm doing the Odyssey, and I'm taking my audience to Mars. And I'm teaching them how to do a catabasis on Earth, as well as create a structure so that you can do a catabasis on Mars, right? So I'm doing a lot of really, really funny intertwined stuff that, it's making constant reference to classical philosophers, making constant reference to, various satirists throughout time. It's constant. It's like very influenced by Finnegan's Wake. That's why it's written in a way where it's not linearly. There's no actual like structure, start to finish of the story. You know what I mean? Like Finnegan's Wake starts in the middle of a sentence, which is the last sentence in the book. And unless you've made it to the last page of the book, you're never gonna realize that the first sentence in the book starts there. And like right on page. Hell yeah, I make reference to Spinoza. Shout out to Tiger Shark. Spinoza, great. So yeah, it's a book for people that want to learn about stuff that they didn't really know before. Like you would have never known that Karl Marx was a satirist, and I write about it in my book all the time. So if you're reading my book, then boom, there you go. You can figure out.
All these people. I'll have to try and get a copy for sure.
You can get it on Amazon too. The Kindle's like $2, dude. It's cheap, right? And also, I'm hooking you guys up with a promo code for my brother's store. So if any of your listeners want to, buy Marcel a sandwich, they can contribute to the Buy Marcel a Sandwich Fund. So if you go to my brother's store, shopscobie1.com, I'll send you the link or whatever. You can get a signed copy of the book there, 10% off, and you guys get a little. If you use promo code Witch Doctor, you get a little, a schmeckle at the end too. So nice. Get this guy a sandwich. So yeah,
thank you. I could definitely use a sandwich.
Yeah, you can use a sandwich or a schmeckle, dude. I got you. So yeah, you can go there. You can buy. My brother's got like loot packs and shit. He does producing, so it gets you 10% off of anything that's on my brother's store and in the future and all that. So that's good for the year. So when you get the book and you want to read it or whatever, you can be like, hey, the book and 10% off. Use promo code Witch Doctor. And that's good for pretty much everybody that I'm going to be on the show and in future shows. So, I want to go on Snappy's show, promo code Snappy. You know what I mean? So
I can't wait to get more of everybody.
When Nasik Informant finishes up his 5-hour documentary he's working on right now, he might have me back on again. He might have me back on again to talk to his audience about satire again.
He just said hello. He was here, so.
Yeah, no, he's a good dude. I sent him the link before it went on.
My channel is, satirical. And I think a lot of people don't really know at first. They can't tell that it's got military battle update briefing style PowerPoint presentation. Where I put in all these just rib jabs that I just destroy everybody. So maybe you can explain to people that the page is also satirical if you visit him soon. But he was saying that yesterday that he's got a 5-hour documentary that he's finishing up.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. He's been sending me updates for like a year now on this thing. I'm like, damn, put it out. Like, it just keeps adding to it and adding to it. I'm like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's how it is. The book I wrote, it's 145,000 words. But at this point, now that the YouTube took off, I'm kind of like, well, crap. now I might be able to talk to half the guys that are in this damn book, and I can expand it even more. So I'm like, hold on, I'm not gonna publish it right away no more. It's done.
Yeah.
I mean, Marcel's got a copy of it, but it's like, I'm like, hold on. I didn't know this was gonna happen, so now I'm gonna actually hold off a little bit longer and finish citing all the freaking pictures, because it's a big art book. At the end of the day, you're looking at all this artwork of Jesus with a magic wand, and then all the predecessor cultures and all of their entheogens and stuff like that. But you mentioned earlier that you like to take a heroic dose of stuff. Do you mind opening up about like how you got introduced to psilocybin and what it's done for you? Because that's something that we talk about here. Obviously, nobody here's a medical doctor. None of us are experts in any fields of study, as I usually have on my disclaimer. But you want to tell us a little bit about like your first experience that really made you be like, wow, there's something here that might have more that I never, where'd you get that big aha moment?
Shit, man. I was mostly just out of morbid curiosity for what other people were, their fascination with this stuff. I grew up. I was a straight edge kid. I still got straight edge tattoos on my elbows. I got X's on my elbows. Like I was a straight edge punk rock hardcore kid. Yeah. I didn't do anything until I was like 22. I think I didn't even like have a sip of alcohol until then. I didn't do nothing. But I read a lot about it. I was interested. It's like it was more of like an anthropological research more so than
same.
Wanting to do drugs. You know what I mean? Right.
Correct.
I didn't want to go and have some whatever nonsense experience like what's his name, Dennis.
Dennis and Terrence,
yeah, those two guys where they got wandered off into the jungle and had to get airlifted out because they were just young hippie kids doing drugs. It's like obviously there's more to this stuff that you need to learn before you go having the experience and all of that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise you're getting an inauthentic, colonizer fucking capitalist bullshit experience. You're not actually, you're bringing in all of your patriarchy, all of your capitalist mindset, all of your colonizer mindset, and applying it onto people where they don't have that experience, dude. Like they don't have that experience. There's a reason why the drugs interact with them differently than
100%, 100%.
Right. And
totally.
Anthropologists have been explaining this for years and decades and decades and decades and decades. And people, they aren't listening until pretty recently, that guy, John.
Now everyone's all about it. It's like, where was this 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah. That guy, John Hoops, who, certain debunkers hate. He's pretty fucking fascinating when you listen to that guy talk about shamanism and the anthropological history of shamanism, because like he explains stuff like the rattles, the aromas in the room, that experience. What the shamans were doing, and I use shaman very, very loosely, whatever that I mean. I'm not. Exactly. It's as inclusive. It's the most inclusive way that I can. I don't want to say medicine man or anything like that.
Right.
I'm being as inclusive as possible by just choosing the word shaman because it's
right. It's all the same to me.
Exactly. I'm just clarifying, right? It's just the common nomenclature. You have somebody pedantic. No, it's just the Russian. I got it. Medea was a shaman. Hecate was a shaman. I got you. Right. Like that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's
for sure.
what we're talking about, right?
Santa Claus. Anyway, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like just to clarify, so yeah, basically, that guy John Hoops is awesome when you listen to him talk about shaman, and people hate that guy because he called Graham Hancock out on being a racist, and they went, no, he's not, no, and then started freaking out, but like they don't actually pay attention to what any of his actual academic research says, and you go, oh, like you would probably agree with every single thing that this guy has to say about shamanism if you actually pay attention to his work. So he explains stuff like the significance of like the rattle and the significance of the aroma in the room and the repeating of things over and over and over. What that does is basically what the person that was responsible for this stuff would give you the same experience from birth to death, right? It was to reinforce a positive mindset when it comes to health. right? So your spirituality and all of that was incorporated. Like if you had to do something, just go there to get a hangnail taken care of. They're giving you the same treatment as they are if you're doing, giving childbirth, or if you're going through a death ritual and easing somebody into the underworld, right? Like those things it's the same experience all the way through, and that's the significance of it, right? And we don't have that in our culture. We have sterile white rooms that there's no noise other than the beeping of the machine and all that. Like it's a terrible environment to try to be healthy in. It's not healthy.
It's a stress-inducing environment, right?
Exactly.
I used to always say that if they
I don't know many
brought
people that talk about that.
You wouldn't want that cold leather couch therapist environment to have an experience. You would want to have it like in like my room, like a setting is so important,
Exactly. So, there's something to it, and it's not just, there's hippies that are better at explaining this stuff than other people. The ones that are really good at doing that are the ones that have studied anthropology, and putting a term like set and setting is like, that's a great way to put it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it has to do with the when it comes to set, it also has to do with your mindset. Right, like what's going on up here, and all the things that led to that in your past that are going to affect the way that you're encountering this entheogen. Right, there's biological and neurological things that are happening chemically and all of that. Science can explain that. The interesting stuff that science can't quite explain is the psychological stuff that has to do with your upbringing, your sociological structures, your relationships to production, and all of those things. Is this a drug that's being administered in a matriarchal or patriarchal society? Are these agricultural people, or are they non-agricultural? Is this an agricultural ritual, or is
this thing first, and then
is there anybody making money off of it or not? Right? If that's not a motivating factor, then like, oh well, anything that you're trying to, any way you're trying to monetize this, you're getting an inauthentic experience, because this was not a monetized thing from the get, right? Like, so that's part of why I like reading people like Carl Ruck, because he explains a lot of this stuff and how it related to the Greeks, right? So he's doing like anthropology, but like to the Greeks instead of anthropology to brown people in the jungle, right? It's like it's valid. It's valid methodology. It's what and I guess linguistics, like it's technically a subset of anthropology. So that's sort of how he's doing it, but he's using anthropological methodology to explain this stuff. And the Bible doesn't do that. Like biblical methodology doesn't have that shit, dude.
They don't do a very good job convincing you.
No, because they're very clearly doing apologetics, and that's a whole different methodology. And it's very clear. It's like, oh, is this person doing a anti-entheogenic apologetic, or are they actually seeing what anthropology is saying about what the text says? Right?
I see. Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. And one of the things that I focus on in the book, and when I first met Aroma and all that stuff, was the importance of aroma, right? Within these rituals. So a lot of this has to do with, right? So if you're taking an entheogen that sends you somewhere else, and when you come back, it can be shocking psychologically if the aroma is different, right? If you have a change of aroma,
that's
with your psyche. Right.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the reasons they're fumigating the same to provide that same experience when they take you back, and while you're in the
you out, right? It eases
exactly.
You out.
Exactly. And there's a medicinal aspect to it, as well as a ritual thing that's lost in language, because language, even the Greek language, right? Like, Ammon will argue the Greek is superior to any other language. And I asked him straight up, I was like, do the Greeks have a word for your inner sense of smell? Yes or no? Just flat out. If he told me yes, I would have started taking Greek classes from him. The reason that he answered honestly, I'm not taking Greek lessons from him, because I don't want to learn about Greek. I said, I want to understand what their mindset was with regard to aroma. What can you teach me about their language? And he goes, well, I can teach you all the basics. I can run you through the process, and then we can focus on this aromatic stuff. But you're going to be disappointed, because even the Greeks have this issue where most of the words have to do with what they see and what they hear. and not what they smell, right?
Yeah.
Because you can never truly smell the thing itself, right? You're approximating your prior experience with what smells like that, right? So you know what I mean? So if you've never smelled something, it's not in your record, it's not in your catalog, it's an entirely new experience to you. So verbally, when communication, you're immediately in the realm of poetry. Right. And this is one of the things that Aroma explains. He's like, smell is poetic to the Greeks, right? Anytime you see it, they're doing something poetic, they're doing something theatrical, they're relating an experience that the audience knows and understands intimately, or they're relating an exotic experience that they cannot and have never experienced to get themselves psychologically.
Do you think maybe the understanding of smell was like so known that they didn't need to just like a word for it? Like, you get what I'm asking? Like, do you think it was so understood? It was just like it was so commonplace that they just didn't feel the need to explain it.
Well, it's the exact same with our culture. What we smell is, it's just, hey, do you smell that? Can you smell that? That smells, is that like it smells like this, or it's like that.
Yeah, okay.
It's a human phenomenon. It's not it doesn't matter what language this is.
Yeah.
Because aroma is fundamentally all these teeny tiny invisible molecules that are floating around that you can't see, and and if they're in different combinations, they present differently. If they're in different levels, they present differently.
Yep.
It's very difficult.
And nostalgia and smell are connected very, very, very well as well.
Exactly, right. So you can smell something, you can get sent back to the past where you smelled that, right?
Yeah.
And I asked him, I was like, what is the Greek word for that? They don't have it. They had to do this clumsy bar bullshit when they were trying to explain aroma. And I went, okay, thank you. I'm not going to take Greek from you, but at least you're an honest person and you're not going to take money from me to get Greek lessons. So I'm not going to and not deliver what it is that I was set out to do. You know what I mean? I can teach myself the alphabet and to, all that on my own. I can read a book and all that. I'm never going to get into be able to read and translate Galen or any shit like that. But even Galen explains a lot of the importance of aroma and how to use your sense of smell to determine certain things about your the potency of the drugs that your ingredients that you're working with. You can smell your patient's breath and diagnose certain things based off of their smell of their breath and stuff like that. Aroma is very, very, very important when it comes in that back in the day. But you can't read a book about how to diagnose, unless you've ever smelled it. You have to, somebody has to go, oh, this is what you're looking for. This is what you need to, and just notice right there where I said the word looking for. Sorry. I just slipped up and it was a great little teaching moment. Notice how I just said, this is what you're looking for. You're not actually looking. You're using your smell. So right there, immediately, we're in the realm of poetry. Oh, you're looking for this smell. Like, no. You're using your sense of smell to determine this, right? But, conversationally and communicatively, we default to our eyes and our ears, right? So it's very, very, very one of those things when you're focusing on aroma. And that's why if you ever watch Aroma, if you can go back to his back catalog and, I don't know next time it comes today, I guess, notice how many times he says, can you smell that? Or do you smell... because that was what I taught, that came out of this conversation that I had with him, saying like, I want to take Greek from you and this is why. And if you can't deliver that, is there somebody else that can? He goes, no, nobody can deliver that for you because the Greeks were humans. And I went, thank you, you're honest, and I'm not going to go learn Greek now, right? And that we're still friends to this day because of that conversation, right? And he's still to this day on his show was to reinforce an idea. He'll go, Can you smell that? Can you smell the anthropology? Can you smell?
He does do that a lot. He does
exactly because that's, and I coined the word with him to describe that rhetorical device, and it's called nose-gnosis.
That's funny because I talk about smell in a similar way all the time. I didn't even realize I do it until we have this until this conversation. I identify with smell greatly.
Yeah. And every single person has their own catalog in their mind of all of the previous aromas that they have smelled, right?
Yeah,
And depending on where you are geographically in the world, like, you know, if you've never been to the South, you're never going to know what dogwood flowers smell like when they're in bloom. But right, exactly.
South Carolina.
I lived in South Carolina when I was a kid, so I know that smell. I have it registered in my brain.
Bro,
my dad was stationed in
in
Charleston. I lived in Goose Creek. My dad was stationed in Charleston.
Bro, I went to Rawlings School of the Arts in Somerville.
Right on. Yeah, I was there. I think we moved when I was like 7 or something like that. Moved up to Connecticut.
Oh man, yeah.
My dad was a nuke, so we traveled around. He was on submarines and shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so,
the
So I have a register in my brain of dogwood flowers, right? And I was working at this winery, probably a decade ago. I was helping them with some of the verbiage on their labels and stuff like that. And this group of let's just say witches came into the winery to celebrate something. And the elder witch, I poured her a Gewürztraminer, which is a German varietal of grape that is very floral, as it's all about the aromatic experience. It's kind of like Riesling, but like very, very, very floral, right?
Okay.
And she goes and she takes a whiff of it, and I start talking to her about it. We're kind of everybody's tasting the wine, and she takes one whiff and then starts bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, are you okay? What's going on? And she goes, and I immediately noticed. I go, you got dogwood flowers, didn't you? And she got sent back into her childhood on her grandmother's farm when dogwood flowers were in bloom. And she was just immediately like in her sundress in a field. You know what I mean? And it's like that's what she was explaining to me. And like I have smelled dogwood flowers. She had smelled dogwood flowers, but no one else in the group had. So for her to try to explain why she got sent back to her childhood, it's like really difficult, right? But like she found dogwood flowers in a Gewürztraminer and got sent to her childhood. And I was there to witness it and to go, it was the dogwood flowers, wasn't like, that was such a really, really cool little moment to, connect with somebody about aromatics. And
full circle.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when so every once in a while, and this sounds kind of funny, but like every once in a while, I'll walk out of a gas station, or the breeze will hit me just right, and it'll smell exactly like Baghdad. And I don't know how to describe it. You have to just have been there, and I don't know. Other veterans watching, you know what I'm talking about.
I've never been to Baghdad. You know what I mean? You'd have to, for you to explain that to me.
It's freaking awesome, man.
For you to explain it to me would be poetry. You'd have to tell me a poem. You'd have to use you'd have to, if you're a great orator, if you're a great poet, you can paint me a picture of what that smell was like. And, I could be prepared to go to Baghdad and kind of go, oh, that's, you know what I mean? But until that happens, I'm never going to have that shared experience with you. Right. And that immediately sends you in the realm of poetry. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. This is a human trait. All humans lack this language. So when you get into talking about aroma, you're back into being a barbarian. You're going bar, 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 grunts and groans and hoo-ha. You immediately turn into your Bacchic monkey brain to try to explain what's going on with your nose, right? And that's like a huge part of my book, and why we, that's our take on cynicism is, following your nose, right? And then what does that do if you're philosophizing about Cerberus's nose in the underworld? Well, Cerberus got 3 noses, right? Like that gives us so much opportunity to do so much fun stuff. Each head have a different meaning. So you got past, present, and future, right? So past aroma, present aroma, and a future aroma. Like that gives you time to, and philosophically, all sorts of, a stage to play around and dance on, right? Especially when you have that background understanding of like, you're immediately doing poetry if you're trying to explain aroma, right? And you can look at any text in the past, any text. Take a look at how they're explaining aroma. Is it a technical thing where it's like, probably not. They're probably doing some sort of poetry. And that's what the book is very, very, very much about, the limits of language, and that approach to philosophy. So I draw from a lot of like Heidegger and Wittgenstein and those sorts of philosophers that philosophize about language. I draw a lot from them on the book to play around with, philosophical aroma, So I coined a couple terms, nose gnosis and nose noose, and an olfactory odyssey, shit like that, like that's in the satirical traditions, coining terms. That's that's if you're ever looking through an old text and it has a bunch of hapax legomena, like, unique words, chances are you might be looking at a satirist, because that's within the tradition, what I mean? Throughout most of existence, the word esoteric didn't exist until Lucian coined it. Lucian of Samosata, the satirist, coined the term esoteric. But everybody knows what, up until that, knew what the concept was, and knew what the word exoteric meant, right? So what you communicate to the audience, not what you communicate to, your inner circle, right? So having a message for two people at the same time. Lucian is the one. Lucian of Samosata is the guy who took his audience to the moon and invented science fiction. Also invented the term esoteric. And,
no way! Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So that concept existed, but the word didn't until Lucian came around and did that, right? Yeah, and there's that's within the tradition is coining new words to raspberries and rum. Do you guys know what that means? Raspberries and rum?
No.
Okay, so this is what I was saying about how we have inside jokes. That came up when I was on Neil's show back on Gnostic Informant. Raspberries and rum is the cosmic background aroma. So the particular little compound that is responsible for raspberries and rum, that aroma, is in such abundance in the Milky Way that they can detect it from Earth.
Oh, wow!
So if you went out to the Milky Way, out into outer space, and you took your helmet off, you took a deep sniff right before your eyes bulge out of your head, and you die. What you would smell is raspberries and rum. So that's the cosmic background aroma is raspberries and rum.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. So your brain is constant. Yeah. You can Google it, dude. You can Google it. It's a particular little chemical. People have written books about this, and they discovered it using. They discovered it using satellites and however scientists do that shit, but fascinating shit. Yeah. So raspberries and rum, and that's a very old. That's a throwback.
Oh wow! I love nonsense facts like that.
Yeah, and it sounds like a nonsense fact, but it's actually true, and it's one of those kind of.
Well, I'm not saying it's not true.
Right? Yeah, it's not, I know what you mean.
within the community, every once in a while, I'll be in the chat. I'll say howdy, and somebody will toss the raspberries and rum. That's what that's referenced to.
I should use that for a trivia question for the next trivia. That'd be good.
Yeah, you should. There's a particular chemical that you can look it up. But yeah, it's cool stuff. So literally everything that you're smelling at all times, your brain is constantly adjusting for the cosmic background aroma, which is raspberries and rum. So everything smells like raspberries and rum, and your brain turns a lot of that off. Right. So if you smell raspberries and you smell rum, that's in such concentration that it's able to overcome the cosmic background aroma, and you're able to, experience that as its own little isolated thing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know raspberries and rum smell like each other. They smell the same.
Right.
Yeah, they smell the same. You just have to, most people have never had a raspberry and have had rum side by side and went, these smell the same. No one's done that. No one's done that. I went to culinary school, so I got to do that.
Where does this combination come from?
It's cosmological, man. Like
I love rum.
The mother provided it, man.
Yeah.
I should make scratch and sniff books. That was in we were thinking about doing a series of scratch and sniff stickers for the book. Yeah.
That would be cool.
If you buy one of the copies of the signed book, it comes with a sticker pack too. So that's just one of those little things. If you buy from us, you get stickers.
And that witch doctor code you gave us is for your guys' actual website?
Yeah, it's for my brother's website. I'll get you the link.
Okay.
He might be in chat and toss it to you guys, but after the show, we'll get you that.
Yeah, no problem.
No, man, we gotta have you on again, man. Your personality is just great, bro.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm loving this. We have to run the show. I'll go away.
I
You
kinda
come
like
talk.
Well, there was a couple of things I wanted to touch on, right? You were asking me about, how did I get involved in, entheogens and all of that stuff, and how did I end up ethyl formate? There you go. Somebody tossed that up in there, in the chat. So
Gotcha.
I was working on an agricultural research farm in college,
thank you.
and basically what they were doing was studying heirloom varieties of wheat.
Oh,
So
cool.
I went out. Yeah, it's awesome. So we grew the
Okay.
very first seeds that were brought off from the Mayflower. So like those genetics, we grew those, and they absolutely sucked. No one of those people starved. Like you can't just take wheat from another place and then grow it in Massachusetts and expect it to do well. You know what I mean? It was grown and bred in that particular place in that environment, and does really well in that in environment in England. England's different than New England, right?
Oh,
like you have to have, it takes time for those grass for wheat to kind of to adapt to its environment and to all of that.
Right.
So what they were
out.
it takes a lot to breed wheat within your microclimate, right? It takes generations for that to happen. That's why anybody who tells you, the Atlanteans were agricultural people that spread agriculture all over the world, it's like, no, that's not how agriculture works, dude. Like this is like a regional little isolated thing that people get really, really good at, and the way that it came about with wheat, it was originally so this farm that I worked on, they had all sorts of crazy genetics from all over the world that they were growing on this particular microclimate to study it and to see how the wheat reacts and stuff. One of my jobs was to walk the field every day, and if I saw the little purple fungus growing off the wheat, I had to bag and tag it, and then contact the agricultural scientists, and they would come and take care of it and shit. Did I freeze up?
I can't wait for you to tell our audience what that little purple fungus was called.
That little purple fungus is called ergot. Am I still here? Am I still there?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I think our camera froze, but we don't need to worry about that.
We'll entertain until you come back.
Yeah, I'll come back. You can still hear me though, right? I'm still
Yeah.
So anyway, that little purple fungus is called ergot, and that little purple fungus is what we got derived LSD from, right?
Yes.
And way back in the day, and the Greeks were using it in their kykeon, right? So this is
100%.
So this is coming from Ruck's research way back in the day, right?
Yes.
So I'm working on this agricultural research farm 15 years ago, studying ergot, studying wheat, and I just, I get fascinated with this little ergot stuff that keeps popping up, and I go, how come all of these older varieties are more susceptible to it? And it's like, oh, well, sometimes they would use the ergot as medicine and stuff. So it wasn't, you didn't want to throw all of it away. And, you would collect that ergot and then, take the ergotized fungus and bring it back to your dwelling. And instead of having these big amber waves of grain, you would have these little patches of purple, which is a Horace reference. So shout out to people who have read the satire and know what the purple patches mean. So anyway, you would have these little purple patches, and that was your medicine patch, right? And this is from women way back in the age in Turkey, way back in the day. What they would do is go out to these fields and collect the ergotized fungus, and not really collect the grain for bread, because you didn't need the bread. You know what I mean? You didn't need it. There was an agriculturalist or a botanist that went out to Göbekli Tepe before all the excavations were done and said, hey, there's all this wild wheat out here. How long would it take me to harvest enough to feed myself for a year? And he determined that a family of 4 could go out in, hunters and gatherers for tens of thousands of years, could go out to these fields in Turkey and collect enough grain to feed themselves for a year with only 3 weeks of labor. What do you do for the rest of the year? I mean, how many weeks are in a year?
52.
Right?
52.
Yeah. And they only had to work for 3 weeks to feed themselves.
Oh, wow.
Right.
What do you do with the rest of your time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You party. You party. Then that's what they were doing.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They were living in such
life
abundance.
sucked back then. I mean, how the hell else are you gonna get? I mean, who's gonna say no? I'm not gonna do this. It's not like we have Netflix and all that stuff back then. But bro, tell me what you think about this. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Right. So I worked on this farm, and I had to study the ergot and bag it and tag it and track it. Right. So, and then I went and took the non-ergotized wheat and did cooking test trials with it. It was really fucking cool. So I contacted a bunch of people that were agricultural scientists and said, hey, what's going on with this little purple fungus? How come people were selecting against it for so long? And how did and trying to get to the point of like, how was wheat domesticated? And yeah. So a lot of people think that the wheat was domesticated for the bread, the bread grain, right? And that's not exactly what they were doing, right? That's not the genetics that we have. That's the domestication. What we have is offshoots of the small patches of purple that these women were bringing back to their dwellings, right? That's what got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over generations, to the point where we have modern wheat that's really big and has all the things that we look for bread wheat, right? So agriculture as we know it is a byproduct of gynecological medicine. So we have anybody who's ever drinking a beer, you can think a witch doctor for trying to prevent bleeding during childbirth, right? Like pretty interesting shit. And a lot of they don't teach it to you quite that way, because it's one of those things that will happen so far in the past that we don't, the comparable size to what you need for a small plot of purple to get yourself enough fungus, enough ergot for a year, is the tiny little square footage compared to the massive amber waves of grain that you need to feed your village for the year, right? So archaeologically, when you're digging in the ground, you have to find what you need to prove this is to find one of these small plots of purple. But you're dealing with an organic thing, right? You're dealing with fungus. The only seeds that archaeologists collect are carbonized seeds. They also get like pollen and that sort of thing, right? So what you'd have to find is carbonized ergot in a small concentrated patch. It's like, well, you're never going to find that. But what you do find is all of this ergotized residue on pottery and stuff like that, right? So you go, oh, they were collecting this, and it wasn't collected in a way where you're going out into a field and finding it, right? It was a very particular type of ergot where you were bringing it back and selecting for the qualities that you wanted, right? Because sometimes, and that selection pressure is what turned wheat to be big enough to make beer and bread and all of that shit out of. So and it's fascinating little piece of anthropology, and that's where my interest in all of this stuff came from. It's out of anthropology, not out of some search for entheogens. You know what I mean? Like I was literally on a farm, ergot in my hand, and next thing I know, I'm reading Carl Ruck, and Carl Ruck is saying all this stuff that I found in Friedrich Nietzsche when I was 13. And I go, oh, this is really fun. Like I read Nietzsche when I was 13, and then when I'm 21, I'm working on a farm, I have ergot in my hand. Now I'm reading Carl Ruck, and he's telling me all this crazy stuff about Aristophanes' frogs and how Dionysus shoved a boat oar up his ass. I'm like, all right, how the hell did I end up in this?
Dude, it's so interesting. I wish my mom was here to talk to you a little bit more about that. Her college project, if you will, and she's an anthropology major, was using ergot for childbirth.
Yep.
And so everything you're saying was I heard her practicing her presentation and talking about it with my dad, who's an author as well. And he put like in his book Darien, he put the Banisteriopsis capi vine as something. But I love that you got into this because of the anthropology, because that's exactly where my curiosity came from, was from my mother, an anthropology major, talking about this stuff and not really paying it as much attention. I went into the military and I was somewhat straight edge, I guess. I was still drinking and stuff, but obviously no entheogens of any kind. It just wasn't ever the thing. And then I ran across it around 33. And, I guess PTSD and being deployed and stuff. My message for a lot of people out there is to the veterans. It's just, veterans are out there and they're hurting. And the VA will throw you on all kinds of stuff. They'll give you enough medication to kill yourself. And just bringing awareness to those, because there's kind of there's been all these campaigns to try to, knock that out of culture whenever it pops up again. We got the Nancy Reagan years, we got the war on drugs, we got hell, I mean, even what is it, Carl Ruck or Brian Marescu, who is he's the little Ruck, if you will. He talks about the same thing, the Genesis being the first war on drugs. That was it's kind of something saying, don't eat from the tree of knowledge, don't consume the fruit that lie within the garden, things like that, these psyop campaigns. And luckily we got guys like you who are really read up on this stuff. I do the best I can, and that can sort of open up their experiences. And where was this this farm at?
It was in Western Mass.
Really, man.
Yeah,
I worked as a lab assistant, and we worked with ketamine and primates. And nobody knew where this farm even was. Nobody in town knew that farm was even in their town. You could see a lot of animal rights guys showing up and things like that. I imagine this was not a very well-known place where you used to work. We still there, bro? We might be having some technical difficulties with our man, Mandy Moorehol.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That's all good.
No, but
it's all good. We'll see if he can get it figured back out.
Yeah. Well, he said,
what an awesome guest, man.
Here you go. Yeah, his camera's acting weird, but his microphone's good, so who cares?
Can we hear you? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
weird. My camera just stopped working. My brother's up here trying to get it to work. I have no idea what's going on. But yeah. So that was really interesting. And then I started reading Carl Ruck, and I think it was a few years after that I saw that video with Amun fucking talking about interesting. And then next thing I know, I'm in the studio with my brother doing a writing session, and that guy pops up on the screen. I go, "That's the guy from the Carl Ruck video." Like, weird stuff. How all the worlds kind of collide. You know what I mean?
Ancient cannabis, and they covered a lot that in that seminar. They broke it up and chopped it into, smaller videos and stuff. And I've featured a few of those screenshots. Just because people want to argue over what the hell a neoniscos even is. And so I'm like, all right, well, look, Carl Ruck is in the audience when he was, this particular Greek classicist was talking about it, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, I'll post 100 figurines and freaking tapestries and paintings of it all lining up with what Lady Babylon talks about. And it's, I don't know what else to do to ease people's frustrations that the guy wasn't 40 years old. And even then, you still got all this explaining to do. But he might still be disconnected.
Yeah, he should be back in a second. He's just fixing everything.
Dude, what an interesting conversation. I'm loving this.
Oh,
man. I know our viewers are gonna love this interview. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. It's too bad. He's got the technical difficulties, but it's no big deal, man.
Yeah.
He helped me solidify some of my own questions, at least through what he said. Things I've been wondering. Oh, there we go. They're back. Yeah.
Yeah, he's back. We getting him all figured out.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, let's put him back in. Or I'll wait for you to do it, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah.
He's still figuring it out, but
yeah,
give us a thumbs up whenever he's ready.
Okay, yeah, because he can hear us right now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think ergot really. I think it's fascinating. I had a big diagram of it, framed at one point. But my mom, she talks about this in anthropology. Once they get onto this topic, there's no going back.
He said he's still watching, so he can hear us.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, but there's no sound now. Okay.
I'm trying to unmute it, but it says their mic isn't. We'll let you guys work on it. And no big deal. No big deal.
It's not a big deal. Oh shit! My boss is coming to pick me up soon. I'm gonna tell him I'm ready. Yes, I'm ready. Yes.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, we're almost at an hour, but once we get him back, we can
One
sign
day.
off a little bit and stuff, and tell people where to go. Post some links to find his material. You
If
definitely
I
got to get the audio book if you're not going to get the hard copy for sure, guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got to get a bank account and stuff. I don't even have a bank account anymore. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if they charge you to have one anymore. I remember when I first got set up with different ones, they didn't worry about that. But then when I started running businesses, I ended up getting business accounts, and they charge you for them.
Oh yeah, no, they charge you for a regular one, but I'll tell that story another day.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's see if we add this new one here.
Is he in here twice?
Doubled.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, what's good? All right.
Double.
Hey, this is Scobie. He helps out with all the technical stuff.
Yo, what's up, brother?
I'm a Luddite, dude. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. When things go wrong, I'm like, God damn it! Like,
oh, well,
yeah.
I don't have a magic wand to do all the
Your
rituals.
microphone's got filters and stuff on it now too. It sounds more clear.
Oh no shit! All right.
Yeah.
He came up, clicked some buttons, and it happened.
Yeah.
I don't have a magic wand to.
There's a compressor and shit on it. I could hear it.
Yeah, he's got a legit that studio up here, man. Like,
okay, yeah.
He's had a bunch of crazy artists come through here and record some shit. We were just working on a vocal session last week when you guys were like, "Oh, you want to do it last week?" I was like, "Ah, shit!" Like I just had a guy come through and confirm that he can do with a session he canceled. And but yeah. Shit, what were we talking about? Ergot, right? You were saying your mom studied ergot for medicine.
Yeah, man. So she was an anthropology major, and so I'm the finger painting art kid that was raised by the anthropology lady, but worked on archaeological digs growing up and lived in Panama as a child, and so had this really cool childhood that you couldn't recreate, man. It was just very, very fortunate to have those experiences. Granted, we lived in the middle of a war zone, but sometimes that ain't that big of a deal. I mean, our house, was in the crossfire, and freaking helicopters, and my mom's combat crawling to the fridge to get milk and stuff. But as an anthropology girl, that's a dream come true, man. That's one notch above Indiana Jones in her book. But it was a way for her to live fully deep in that medicine man, Sean Connery jungle kind of vibe that every anthropology guy or girl wants to creep into. And the only reason I never really did that in college was because it doesn't make a lot of money. So I always looked at some other options. I had different careers and stuff. And but anthropology was kind of the beginning of it for me too. And one of the projects she did was on ergot being used for childbirth, and it would reduce the chance of the bleeding.
Yeah, reducing bleeding. Yep.
Yeah.
And help them relax to have the baby. And
I'll be here in 5 minutes, so I'll give my goodbyes now.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say, bro, before we peace out?
I'll just say thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks to Mandy Moorehol for coming and having a great conversation.
Yeah.
I hope to talk to you again in the future. I know we will.
Yeah, you're coming on again, man. This is great.
And I can hang around too. I got literally nothing going on in the studio all night, so I can be here till Lady Babylon goes on. If you want to do a long run.
I'll be back in an hour or so, or hour or two. I'll be back. Yeah. Oh no, he fucked up now.
Oh shit! Did he kick his camera?
Maybe.
I'm back. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be back in an hour or two. So, if you guys are still on, I'll come back. I just gotta go do some work at the club.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, no, I hit the button on the side of my laptop. I just got this laptop because my last one crashed. So I'm not familiar where the buttons are. So I hit the freaking off screen. So anyway, but yeah, man, thank you, Marcel, so much for helping me, steer the conversation a little bit, and I really appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be back shortly if you guys are still up.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, we'll probably stay on for another 30 minutes or so. I got a bunch of crap to do tonight too. Okay. I got a basketball game tomorrow I'm coaching and stuff. So, I help out with my son's team. So it's a lot of fun, but I got other stuff to do, but yeah, no, we got to get you on again, man. With you and another guest, we got to do like a 4-way split screen. And have some different topics that we bust open. Lucian's definitely another one that we're going to bring back. And then obviously more on this ergot and whatnot for sure. That's the one thing that, when I was writing this book, and maybe you can help expand on this some more. it seems like I've heard two conversations. Okay, I've heard conversations about burning purple, about it being the purple dye, and I've heard conversations about this referring to ergot, and I've heard conversations about this referring to them being used together as a way of sort of blessing or decorating a type of application with purple. You see what I'm saying? I've heard of it, of the burning purple being two different things. And so I didn't know if you had any more information on that reference that you could break up a little bit more so I could get some clarification on that.
Yeah, so my understanding is the burning purple and ergot are two different things. And when you use them in combination, that's how you get this polypharmaceutical stuff that Amon talks about. But the burning purple comes from the murex, the dye from the little snail, right? Then that's what the burning purple comes from. But that can be used as a solvent for other compounds, right? So you would make this burning purple dye and then put all of sorts of other things into that burning purple concoction to get what it was that you were looking for, right? So, and you needed to know your dotes and your antidotes and all of that stuff, and that's where Galen comes in. Lucian, funnily enough, actually talks about the purple in one of his satirical dialogues, and it comes out of the mouth of Diogenes, where he's basically ridiculing the audience for eating the snail from the murex and not using it for the purple. Right? And unless you understand what the purple is and what the murex and all that stuff was used for, you're never really going to understand quite what Lucian was getting at, right, through Diogenes. You know what I mean? It's Lucian's Lucian satires are dialogues, kind of like how Plato, his work is all dialogue, so that two people talking back and forth,
right,
each of them as a persona or a character, yada 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 yada. So there was a dialogue with and Lucian was part, or Diogenes was part of one of those, and he basically through the mouth of Diogenes says that people are foolish for eating the murex snails, like that you're doing it wrong, like those aren't for eating, you idiots, right? Like and it's and
you don't eat it.
Yeah, you don't eat it, but also Diogenes, being a cynic, right? He doesn't care about your fine garb and your sindons that are like ornamental. He doesn't care about your silks and all of that stuff. So why did he put those words in Diogenes' mouth, right? Because Diogenes is talking about the concoction that you get from the shell, not the food you get from eating it, right? Like to that audience, that's fucking hilarious, because everybody knows the burning purple is what you drink and what you mix and mix with the venoms and all that.
And that's what I was thinking, right? So that's, I'm glad that you broke that up, because I'll hear dialogue. Like, for example, I was watching a podcast where people were actually growing the ergot, right? And they brought it in and showed it and stuff, and they were like burning purple, and I was like, huh?
No.
Wait a minute. Or are they just being funny? They're probably just being funny. They can't be that uneducated on it if they've already started growing it, right?
Yeah. So ergot's one of those things that, knowing that it's different from the burning purple. No, the burning purple is the murex, right? That's where that comes from. And then you add to it. Okay, so there are two separate things. And you got the kykeon, which is the concoction from the Eleusinian mysteries, right?
Right.
With it's based, it's wine based. They put the ergot in it and all of that stuff.
Right.
So people have tried to recreate the kykeon, and to somebody like me, I go, oh well, obviously you can't do that, because the actual varietals of grain that they were growing, right? So this is an agricultural thing, right? So you have the wild wheat, right? You have the Bacchic wheat, and then the women, the nymphs, the maenads go out and harvest the ergot and bring it back to their dwelling and start growing the ergot and give it to the witches so that they can brew the beers and all of that stuff, right? So the actual grain that was growing in the wheat fields for beer and for bread doesn't exist anymore, right? It's been replaced with modern varieties, and it was probably replaced thousands of years ago, right? And not all varieties of wheat produce the same potency or type of ergot that you're looking for, or type of ergot that you're looking for, right? So you can get one that causes you to go insane and causes your foot to rot, or you can get the one that's super high in all of the things that the precursors for LSD and will make you trip balls. In the hands of an expert that's experienced in selecting for these and for cultivating the right type of ergot, the one that will make you trip balls versus the one that will make your foot fall off, right? This is an important skill that we don't have anymore, right?
They're not all the same.
It's not all the same, right? And depending on the seasonality, depending on certain things, it'll be more likely that you get the one that's high in the LSD precursors that you're looking for the kykeon to make you trip balls and have an entheogenic experience instead of make your foot fall off. The type that makes your foot fall off is St. Elmo's fire, right? That's what that is associated with. Is it St. Elmo or Saint? It's one of the saints. Saint
Anthony's fire.
St. Anthony's fire. There you go.
Yeah, you got the right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Saint whatever. He's a saint.
St. Anthony's. Yeah, it's just another way to get you to not want to also, because it's also psyop too. So it's like St. Anthony's fire. Yes, there is a version that you're not going to enjoy. You're going to have a hard time. But that's also, it was also to make people not want to touch any of them. It was, sort of a scare tactic. I've been told.
Right. So this is the thing that was actually cultivated. It's not a thing that, you just went out into your wheat field and was lucky enough to find some ergot. You had a small pot of purple, right? You didn't go out into your amber waves of grain to get your ergot. That's what we're reduced to doing because we've lost the thousands of years of experience of how to select and how to cultivate ergot. Right? It's still done in commercial production for migraine medicine, but it's not the ergot that'll make you trip balls. It's the type of ergot that was genetically selected by medicinal companies to alleviate migraines. And it's not even the same.
LSD, not for the lysergic acid, for a different alkaloid.
No, yeah, it was for a different alkaloid that helps you with migraines. Yeah, the ergot, whatever it is, right?
Or whatever. It's an ergot something. Yeah.
It's what they grow it and then they go and run it through their
different other ones that they use.
Sure, exactly. So the stuff that they had in Greece that they were using in the rites for the Eleusinian mysteries, those genetics don't exist anymore, right? They do not. You can't take our modern, say, like red fife, if you wanted to get an old wheat and take it from your feed store or your agricultural supply store and try to grow ergot. You're going to get a different type of concentration of the potency, right? Because it wasn't selected for that purpose. It was actually selected against, right? So these are ergot resistant genetics that we have in our modern bread and beer wheat. And
that Monsanto wheat and Monsanto rye and
I wouldn't
different engineered to not have the sclerotia that grows the.
Well, so that selection, that's something it's a 10,000-year-old problem, right? So this is a thing that has been selected for 10,000 years. And it's only now that we have, GMOs and shit like that. But I don't even think there's GMO wheat that's on the market or GMO rye or anything like that because.
Oh, no.
No, it's not something that, you really have to worry about when you're,
just corn.
What's that?
Just corn.
Yeah, just corn. And that's because
and
that's because the particular genetics of corn and stuff. And there are people who suggest that the process for the cultivation and domestication of corn was actually originally for the corn fungus, which is medicinal. And as that corn changed over years, the fungus too. Yeah. So it doesn't. It generates something different. It has different reasons for that. But there are people that suggest that that's what you were actually selecting for because those are the really, really big grains. You get the most. Mm-hmm. You get more fungus than you do actually grain because the grains back in the day they're the size of your pinky, right? Whereas the fungus can be the size of your thumb sticking out at the side of that right? So that's what they were selecting for, was this fungatized corn, because you would get higher yields, right? And then sometimes, depending on the situation, time of the year, the fungus could do some interesting stuff. It didn't turn out to the point where, you know, that was medicinally useful in that way, and it just turned into a food product. But yeah, you can see the ergot on the screen right now, right? So this is the stuff you see, the wild, you know, the wild up in the corner. That's what, you know, wheat used to look like, and that's what it looked like when you were going out to your field, right? So you would basically take that and, you know, have these little plots of purple, where you would have this entire thing be purple instead of just one or two little you know, pieces sticking out there. So you were selecting for the purple, and, you know, concentrating and, you know, cultivating the ground even, right? You were doing rituals in your garden to, you know, encourage the growth of the fungus on the grain, right? So, you know, because it was your medicine, right? And you're talking about a matriarchal society, or a matriarchal tradition that exists within a patriarchal structure, right? That's how you can sort of see this duality taking place here, right? The matriarchal selection was for the medicine, the patriarchal selection was for the bread, right? Give the people bread and circus, you know, while the women are over there making sure they don't bleed in childbirth, right? Like, those are two different like ways that you need to balance your society, right? Like, you need to make sure that, you know, women don't go dying, so that, you know, all these people can have their bread and circus. You need to do both, right? Like, what do? You know, how much square footage, how much acreage do you dedicate to either one of those, right?
Right, Lady of the Grain, man.
There's
a picture I include on my a couple of my different presentations. One of the satire skits I got is a slide on Stephenism. Right, my name is Stephen, and it's just the cult of Saint Stephen, the first martyr. But there's a picture of him with a giant stalk of grain in his hand. And I try to explain to people that this is a reference to the very thing we're talking about now. However, they don't really graphically put this stuff in artwork. I mean, obviously, it's got to get the thumbs up from different people if it's going to live on, and your name's going to live on as an artist. So you got to be real subtle with stuff. And so just like Jean-Claude Schmitt, he's a French medievalist. He looked at the anthropology and the artwork, which is something that I'm big on my channel, is I want to look at the anthropology, the ethnobotany, and the artwork that surrounds the culture, and try to get a more realistic understanding. Because as we know, the Chick-fil-A version, as I call it, that version of, you know, Christianity hasn't done a very good job convincing anyone that these post-biblical narrative versions of it, just that just doesn't give you enough. And then people have these experiences, and whether they were a 33-year atheist like me that didn't think there was anything left for you after you died, a very old school anthropologist, clean-cut anthropologist outlook on stuff is just to think that we're evolved monkeys, and when you're done, you're done, and that's it. And a lot of that changed for myself. It changed my life, you know. So, and I'm not the kind of guy I'm not a doctor. I don't have any expertise in anything other than not even art. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression, obviously. But this is fascinating stuff. And this is just the beginning. I mean, in the last 4 years, you've seen all the Netflix different specials on the spirit molecule, DMT, or Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind, or Fantastic Fungi with Paul Stamets. You know, these different things have become mainstream now. But the big thing, I wanted to be a psychologist when I first started college. And, you know, I've had 3 different majors and, you know, changed it 100 times. But, you know, I had heard that people were getting so much relief from this stuff that, as a guy with, you know, a tour under my belt, and arguably, I guess, a second one from my childhood, maybe a little bit of stress from that, you know, that I was willing to see just, you know, I was never about that in high school. You know, my friends would go, you know, cow picking, you know, or whatever, cow patty picking, and looking for different stuff. They probably weren't even getting the right kind, honestly, back then. They were probably eating straight ibotenic white mushrooms out the fields, you know, and just, you know, it's the beer they're drinking or whatever that they think that they're having the experience or whatever. But I also don't think that if you're not ready, like you were saying, if you're not ready for the experience in that kind of way, that's not what you're going to get from it either. Yeah. And I noticed a huge difference between how I look at life before these experiences and after having, oh God, I lost count how many big bigger. You've definitely got me beat, I'm sure. But I think it's a way for people that have been stuck in some weird ruts. You know, you have to increase the conversation with this. Now, my wife, she's getting a degree in psychedelic investigation from our favorite university, the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It seems like they have all the cool courses and all the cool classes that everybody might be looking for, where you can go online and get your extended education. And you know, it's starting to really take off, the different trials that they're studying and how they're studying this particular, you know, right now it seems like psilocybin and ketamine are neck and neck. Now, I worked with ketamine with primates, but I've never experienced ketamine. And as where it is a synthetic that you need to know what you're doing to get it. It's where it's controlled. And that's where I don't like it as much as an option. And then, of course, there's, you know, things like psilocybin that we all just saw Dennis McKenna on the Concrete podcast. And he made a reference that, you know, that psilocybin fungus is one of the more convenient ones that, you know, people can, you know, you could grow it in your closet hypothetically, or there's a bazillion retreats now around the world that do this stuff. And there's even like Special Operation Warrior Foundation teams of guys that will send you down to a resort in Mexico or Jamaica and work with some of these guys that have been exposed to a lot of trauma. And so that's my message for everybody, is just, you know, we're here for everybody. Everybody's got a story. You know, everybody's been through their own version of hard stuff. And if we can shed any education that makes people feel better about this, because there is the only reason that Christianity gets wrapped into this so much on my channel is because people would rather suffer because somebody that absolutely knows nothing about the freaking Bible, doesn't even know that it was Greek in the first place, as far as like the New Testament and stuff, you know, or arguably, you know, a lot of our friends, you know, are arguing for even more. And so with all that being said, it's like, well, don't let those guys, if you're not getting fulfilled from this metaphysical explanation from our local youth pastors and ministers and stuff, there's a whole nother world that's even more, it's more tangible. It actually gives you these results. And I would have never thought in a million years, when I was in my 20s and I was an Army guy, I was paratrooper, jumping out of airplanes, all trying to be a tough guy or whatever, just a fake ass handsome McGee or whatever. And oh, thank you so much, scrolling.
Hey, hell yeah,
dude. Thank you so much.
Hey, real quick, can you bring up you got your boy here, Lord Cameron, in the chat. He had a couple of questions to clarify about maize. He was asking one here. Is he saying ergot grows on maize? Can you pull that up real quick?
Yeah, I just
want to. It's probably back.
I grew up next to maize fields. That's ergot.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. All grains have a parasitic fungus that grow on it, right? Not all of them are ergot. Ergot only grows on things that are in the family of wheat. So maize, being corn, is a different type of fungus. It's not, there isn't ergot that grows on it. It doesn't have precursors of LSD the same way that that what you get from corn is.
Right, it's a different strain.
Well, it's a parasitic fungus, and all grains, all grasses have a parasitic fungus that grow on it. Some of them have different qualities. So you know,
glad
rice.
That you brought it up.
Yeah, I was noticing that. Maybe I wasn't too clear because maybe they were confusing what I was saying with what you had on the screen. But yeah, there's fungus that grows on it, and some people who study domestication have suggested that maybe it was the fungus that was originally selected for, because you know that was a larger yield, right? So you would take the stuff that was susceptible to the fungus and bring it back and grow that, and let the wild grasses be wild, right? So because you would end up with a higher yield of, you know, tonnage, you know, actual poundage of material and food at the end of the time. So your you know, your time energy was dedicated to finding this fungatized grass rather than the actual grain itself. So by selecting for the fungatized grass, the grains themselves got bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And that's just a product of the selection process. So any decision, so anybody who's ever grown weed or anything like that, or bred tomatoes where you can crossbreed them and stuff, anything that you add or take away has other effects down the line, right? And some of them may be so minute that they don't present themselves for generations and generations, and you don't even know it, right? So you might cross one tomato with another tomato, and only to find out that the selection that somebody did down the line for a disease resistance, that was lost in that crossing process, right? You don't know that sort of thing until that fungus that disease comes about, right? And
Right.
it takes somebody that's actually has a good understanding of how this process is done, that can recognize and anticipate that sort of stuff. And modern technology makes it way easier now too. We can look under microscopes and look at DNA and all that kind of shit that the ancients didn't have to them. But the fact that they were able to select, go out to a field and find these little purple grains and bring them back to their dwelling to make small purple patches. It takes just in the small purple patch was medicine to reduce bleeding. What were they looking at? And some people said, oh, maybe they were looking at animals who were eating the fungus in nature while they were pregnant, so that for that purpose. I'm not sure. That's speculation. Have to really. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to there's a lot of guesswork and all that stuff going, but you can better understand the selection process when you can take your mindset out as much as possible, right? So they weren't doing this stuff for commercial reasons. There was no motivation to make money. Money didn't exist, right?
This is all about
exactly
them getting better at everything they're doing, and experiencing obviously this piercing of the veil that these traditions get handed down, and it's they add on to it. Every generation learns more or improves it, and I'm sure that they've lost a few along the way. There always seems to be that hell, they were sacrificing a lot of things back in the day, so having somebody learn the hard way that that one knocks you out cold, that's going to happen. But they've paid the price, they've paved the way, working in the primate world. There was uncomfortable days for science, and I am proud to say that we were the guys that tested the quick clot for the United States Army. And when I went to Iraq, we had the product that I had tested, but I'll never forget working there, because it's a bittersweet kind of job. My wife's she's a lab tech herself, and when you get into topics like this, it just really, you start to think to yourself, I want to see if I can do this, so I had my experience with growing fungus and growing different kinds of cannabis. I probably grown 12 or 15 different autoflowers, and then a handful of the photoperiods, if that's how you refer to them. I feel like I've lost a lot of my knowledge as I've pumped more Greek into my brain, self-taught, obviously. As I've pumped more Greek in my brain, other things have left the whiteboard, if that makes sense. So, and I'm trying to memorize. That's why I wrote the freaking book, because I was I want to, at least, even just for my own sake, show that I ever learned the shit, and just put it on paper. After the handful of books I never published, trying to be like my dad, who's got a bunch of books. And published them, and it's a hobby of his that he did while contracting in Afghanistan and overseas. It was really good time to write books for sure. But But you have anything else you got on the horizon? I got another couple projects in the mix. You got anything new you're working on?
Well, I've got the next year's volume of the book. And you got your flyer for the Chorus of Frogs. So if you want to contribute something to the book, you're more than welcome. I'm always taking contributions of that stuff. I'm putting out a song every single day this year. So I didn't put out any music last year, with the exception of doing features on a couple people's tracks. I did a collaboration with Danny Jones. I was on a Danny Jones track, or not Danny Jones, a Teddy Bass track. Did a couple of tracks with some artists last year, but I didn't release any original stuff. And then this year I'm putting out a song every single day. So, you can follow me on Spotify or whatever your preferred,
Spotify.
Yeah, I just put it out on DistroKid. So, it goes out everywhere.
Do you have an Instagram or a Facebook that you use that you want to shout out?
No. So I basically anytime I'm on any social media, my goal is to get kicked off. I'm trying to get banned, and
man.
yeah, that's my entire goal. You know what I mean? It's like
He's a rebel leader.
I got banned from myth and lore, so like it takes effort
Really?
to do this. Oh yeah. I
Yes.
tried my best, and it happened after all the influx of Ammonite, the influx of like the Danny
Just
Jones audience,
everyone eating each
and
other.
then it became chaotic and had like a right wing bent, and I was like,
Everyone
I didn't
sacrificing each other in their thumbnails, and like
I was like, shit, like
I'm stealing people too. Like,
I was like, I didn't come here to like argue with Nazis and explain the shit. Like, we got to have some sort of a vetting process. And I was just like barking. I just being a cynic, I just started barking to see what it takes to get kicked off. Like, what does it take? Because everybody knows I'm a good person. I'm not out to, like, if I'm barking at somebody, it's for a reason. Like, they're the person that's the problem. I'm alerting people to it. You know what I mean? That's my reputation. And I've also made a reputation of not being nice. I'll like call people out on their bullshit. So yeah, basically got kicked off of Myth and Lore for not following the rules, and I was like, all right, like, so that establishes like, and I'm still friends with all those people. I'm just not allowed on the the servers. And it's like I'm still friends with literally every single one of them. There's no reason.
I got booted off of the Lady Babylon Reddit.
I've never been on I don't participate.
I was on a show, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't participate on Reddit. I don't care about any of that. I got kicked off on it. I got kicked off of Instagram for arguing with Ayn Rand cultists, which was a lot of fun. So, that was my goal from the get. I'm just going to, when I started rapping and putting out projects as Mandy Moorehol, I created all the socials, and I was like, let's get kicked off of all of them and see what it takes. And, I got kicked off I got kicked off of Instagram for arguing with Ayn Rand cultists, and that was a lot of fun. She was a Soviet spy, and they refused to, acknowledge it.
But let's not bring that up, please. But man, dude, it's been a pleasure.
Hell
man.
yeah.
I gotta wrap it up. But bro, we gotta have you back
all
on
right.
the channel
before I go, I need you to answer the Cerberus question. This is the question that inspired the book. I'm getting as many people to give me their answer to it, and I want to know your answer. And there is an answer to this. And unless you've read the book, unless you read the Skeleton Key, you got to read the book to find out, or ask somebody who has contributed to the book and is in the know. And most of the people already. But how many penises does Cerberus have? 1 or 3?
Do you want me to guess?
Well, it's not a guess. It's not a guess. You gotta. This is your philosophical. This is your initiation into the Cerberesian school of cynicism. You have to answer that question, and then because there is an answer to it.
I want it. So I'm not read up on Cerberus at all, but as I'm starting to expand further past before the New Testament into those different works, my guess would be 3, similar to like the trident representing a 3-headed phallus as well. Something of that nature being part of the energy here. I'm not sure though.
I love that answer. 3 is a valid answer. 3 is a valid answer. 1 is a valid answer. Some people have answered 9. Some people have answered 7. Some people have answered 1.5. But there is an answer to it. And, next time I'm on the show, I'll give you the answer to the Cerberus question. But I love that, you have a reason for your answer for 3. And 3's a fun club to be in. Neil's also answered 3. So,
well, I'm learning a lot more about, the way that literature was changing and how they were explaining metaphysics. And, and when you start looking at different concepts of Satan, different concepts of like the Triton thing I just referred to, and you're like, okay. All right. So they were kind of splitting the dimension here with these stories. I mean, it makes it, for somebody that like myself, from a fairly educated family, I just have become fascinated with that era like no other. I mean, and even back when, and you probably were there too, in 2003 when Troy came out, I'm sure you went and saw it, and it was just like, yes. But then there's so much more beyond what you see that it blows your mind when you keep adding to it. People used to bring them all the time, like, even when I didn't know anything about the Greek gods, but just talked about it a lot, they were like, tell us about the Greek gods, like at parties and stuff. People are so fascinated with the topic that we got to have you on again, man. This has been absolutely just dynamite interview, bro. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to I guess the closing thoughts, like I do with most interviews, remind your audience that there's a reason why the Trojan War happened. And you have to understand, and read the backstory to the Trojan War. Do you know the backstory to the Trojan War? Do you know the story of the original snub?
Well, I know all I know about the Trojan War is from the angle that I write about it in my book, from the angle of Paris and Hector. But that's all I got.
Okay, so that's the story of the war. There's a story of about why that happened. So it's the backstory, the prequel, if you will. It has to do with the original snub. All right. So there was a wedding. All of the sisters were invited, except with the exception of Eris, the goddess of discord, strife, confusion, international relations. Basically, she wasn't invited to the wedding because she causes ruckus everywhere she goes. She's going to cause a problem. She's going to cause an argument. She's going to cause somebody to get confused. And so basically, all of the sisters are like, let's not have Eris ruin this one for us. And Eris decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go down to the underworld, get one of those golden apples of Apollo, and I'm going to write a word on that apple. And that word is going to say Callisti. Do you know what Callisti means in Greek?
I've never looked it up.
It means to the most beautiful. So she took a golden apple of Apollo and wrote to the most beautiful on it and tossed it into the wedding and walked away. Now, the three sisters, they started obviously arguing about who the most beautiful at the wedding was. Right. And they went up to Zeus, and Zeus basically said, I don't want to deal with this. I'm absolutely drunk, having a good time. Right. You three take Hermes and go find a human to figure this out, because I don't want anything to do with it. Right. So took the three sisters and Hermes. We all know about Hermes. He thought that he deserved the apple because, Hermes thought he was the most beautiful, which I guess probably would have been the correct answer. It would have solved a lot of problems and not had the Trojan War. So anyway, they go down to Earth, and Paris, he's absolutely tripping balls by the river. He's on some entheogens, which were allowed to him to connect with these three goddesses. Right? He wasn't selected. He communed with them, right? He was in a certain state that allowed that to happen, right? Hermes, being the psychopomp, was like, oh, there's one of them down there tripping balls. Let's go have him sort this mess out, right? Turns out it's Paris, right? So the first sister, she goes, I'll give you all of the land that you want. And Paris goes, my dad is a king. I don't need land. We can just go get land. Like, I'm not going to, no. The answer is no. The second sister, she goes, well, I'll give you all of the money in the world, all the money you want. And he goes, the answer's still the same. My dad's a king. I can go get money. I don't need money. It's not appealing to me. And then Aphrodite, she goes, you know what I'm going to give you, Paris? The most beautiful woman in the world. You know who that was? Helen.
Edgar Allan Poe talks about a Helen.
So, according to the backstory of the Trojan War, the original snub, right, is because of this apple and this argument and entheogens. And according to Paris, it was divinely ordained. So he was in the right to go and get Helen. So
he had the green light,
He had the green light. He was like, look, like, according to all of this, I did the ritual and the rites. Aphrodite said, what else do you want from me? Divinely ordained. I'm gonna go and Helen and I are gonna go do our thing. So, Aphrodite's one of those, you kind of gotta look out for her. You know what I mean? When she pops up, some messy things happen, right?
Right.
So a lot of that sort of backstory is lost in a lot of people's tellings. You know what I mean? And I mean, how old are you now and you've never heard the story of the original snub that caused the Trojan War, but you heard the Trojan War story so many times. How come you don't hear
apple one time and it never stuck? And now that you're saying it, I'm like, I remember this.
It's the golden apple. The golden apple, the apple of chaos, is what caused the Trojan War.
That was everything in the background that you didn't see in the movie Troy. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yep. So, all of that and, everything that fell out, those were all, mortals and human problems. The whole Helen and Paris thing, divinely ordained.
The whole falling out they had
kind of changes the way you look at the story a little bit. You know what I mean?
In my book, the way that I did, and I don't know if it's a great idea, but this is the book that I haven't finished, that I stopped writing halfway through when I had this one particular scene about a Roman meeting a magi. But the way that I wrote the Hector Paris story was just sort of like a realistic version of it, right? But that same Entheogen is part of it. It's part of the initial of how it all happens, but but they also they give it to other people. They poison these guards with other kinds of their magic potions and whatnot. End up taking Helen and all in there, right? But it doesn't have any of the golden apple or any of that, obviously, because it's being told from like a like I said, it's an anthropology style.
It's being told from inherently patriarchal. It's a retelling that has an ingrained patriarchal mindset that it takes a lot to overcome, right? And this isn't a story that has to do with agriculture, right? So it's overcomes that, right? So you have to understand that the gods are not the gods are not agriculturalists. They're not farmers. The gods are hunter gatherers. The gods, right? Like they don't, they have people do their farming for them. And it's kind of a different, when you have a story told about the gods and the story told about a demigod, and then you have a story of an average person, you're forming an internal triad there of ways to reflect upon yourself and to, understand your role in society and all of that. And to, sort of, love your fate rather than, dwell on your situation so much. And, all of these stories were told at agricultural festivals that happened once a month, right? They were seeing this stuff on the stage ritually once a month. And when was the last time you went to the movies? How many movies did you see last year? One. Right? Like I saw Nosferatu. That was the only time I've been to the movies in 5 years. You know what I mean? But in these cultures that
I'll try to get the kickback and it just doesn't happen.
In these cultures that when you're watching Lady Babylon and Almon's trying to communicate this to you, like this stuff is happening at ritual festivals that happen once a month. So it's not like a big deal to these people if the story's told a little bit differently over in this community, because that's sort of part of the fun. People would travel to these festivals.
Yeah, it's like, right? The people over in that town, they party like this. People in this town,
they tell the story in this way, or on the stage, if they're by the coast, they have, sea creatures and, clams and lobsters and stuff like that that's involved in the story. Vibe. Whereas, if you have people up in the mountains, they have goats and they have when they're telling the stories, they're telling the same story but adapting it to their circumstance, right? So that's, and then you have people that are within cities that are also doing the same thing. So you have when you're reading these stories and when you're engaging with this stuff that Amon's talking about and that classicists talk about, you have to understand that there's a dichotomy going on between the rural rights and the city rights, right? A lot of the city rights are recreations and synthesize. They're basically like smoking, a weed pen, right? They're taking and saying like, how do we, do this stuff in the streets and how do we do this stuff in the city? Whereas you go out into the country and you're on a weed farm, right? Like it's different, right? You're smoking flower. Like it's different. It's a different experience. You're outside, you're smoking flower versus, in a smoky place taking puffs off your vape pen, right? It's a different experience that you're getting. And if you want to, if you're looking at it, you can try to think like, is this a ritual or a story that's being told from the perspective of a rural farmer, or is this being told from the perspective of a city dweller? Right? You're getting very, very, very different mindsets that are clashing, right? And then you have people that are and then in these cultures you have people that are still that are tribal. You have people that are, you know, horseback women that are nomadic, that, you know, have one boob, and, you know, they'll show up at your festival and pick out the Neoniscos that are ripe, that are like, you know, the buff ones, you know what I mean? That's like, you got to think some of these
workhorses.
yeah. So, you know, that's what this part of the selection process was like, you know, happening, right? Think about the selection process from the perspective of a Scythian Amazonian woman, right? If you're going to a festival, right, you're showing up, you're looked at as like the Hell's Angels that are showing up, going, they're here for different reasons than all of us are here. So like, keep an eye out for them, right? What they were doing, they were looking for breeding stock, not only for their horses, because they needed that. They were horse people. So obviously they're going to show up at your ritual and go, hey, we need big, strong breeding stock for our horses. Let's, you know, our horses and your horses can fuck, you know, in this ritual process. But also there were women looking for the best breeding stock for the male selection, right? And within these cultures, you weren't
for farming and war.
yeah. It was sort of a death by snoo situation, right? Like they were there, right? It wasn't for your enjoyment, right? So that's why you hear this process of like, they'll give you the burning purple and send you into the underworld for 3 days while you have a raging boner, and they're gonna rape you and take advantage of you. That's because it wasn't for your enjoyment. It was not for your enjoyment, right?
You were looked at quickly.
you in this culture, if you were selected for, you were looked at as like a breeding horse, right? You were being, it was artificial insemination. You weren't there to be like, you know, it was, and you know,
they just need you for one thing.
Exactly. And if you couldn't make it through the ritual, the catabasis ritual that they would put you through, where you had to maintain a boner for 3 days while you were down in the underworld, you know who you see when you're down in the underworld? You see Cerberus. So anybody who's ever been through this ritual and doesn't have an answer to the Cerberus question, hey, how many penises did Cerberus have when you were down there? If they don't have an answer for it, they never went through a catabasis. They were just sleeping and didn't go through the process. So that's how you know the authentic catabasis came from this matriarchal selection for males to reduce excess males, where males were looked at as breeding stock and not like patriarchal leaders. So it's and I have a saying in the book where I say that it's harder to imagine the end of capitalism than it is to imagine an authentically matriarchal society, because it's true, right? Like you can't like anytime you try to imagine what the collapse of society would look like, it turns into like a male dominated all out war situation, which isn't what would happen, right? The women would go and kill all of the excess men.
Back like a lion tribe. Women are in charge.
They would take
they
over.
Only need the guys for their seeds, but they run the pack, you know. In nature, that's argued a lot, that in nature women run different groups, you know, depending on what we're talking about.
They have just like this is the type of selection that I'm talking about, where the mindset that would allow you to go out into a field, find this tiny little fungus, bring it back to your dwelling, and have these small plots of purple, which would eventually turn into agriculture, is the same as mindset where you would go to one of these festivals and you would pick the best breeding stock out of the group and have them and have them, you know, you would kidnap them, right? And also part of them, you would have to kill these women would have to kill 3 before they were able to go do this, right? So they were thinning the herd, right? Getting rid of excess males, because you're a farmer. How many male chickens do you have in your farm? One. One. How many male horses do you have? How many male goats do you have?
One stallion on the whole farm. One buck in the pack, except for the babies.
Exactly, right?
They
Now,
fight all damn day.
yeah. Now there's no reason for more than that. And
Right.
here's the thing is that, you can have the city dwellers go and raise them and,
Yeah.
make them start doing lifting rituals and, feats of strength and get all buff and handsome. But like,
Right.
that's that's a different selection pressure, right? So, when it comes to some of the ethics and it comes to, the way that this medicine tradition came about, it's like, if you're applying your own ethics to the situation, you're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? If you're applying your own ethical mind state that you inherited through, 500 years of capitalism and 10,000 years of patriarchy and, 2,000 years of goddamn Christianity, you're not in a place where you can authentically speak to somebody else's traditions, right? Like it's some of the stuff that Amon says, it's gross. It's like, oh, they were doing what with their who? And they were doing that to kids and what? And it's like, okay, well, remove yourself from all of the ethics, remove yourself from all of the mind state, and keep in mind that these were
before the pollution.
Women. Yeah, before the pollution, they were women tradition. If you're a male, you have no say in any of this. So you're not even in any place, in any way, shape, or form to ever talk to the ethics.
Y'all just hold spears, man.
Yeah, it's like if you're talking to the ethics towards some of the stuff that I'm saying, it's like, and you have a penis in your pants, you're not in any place to say anything about the ethics involved in some of the stuff, these rituals that these women were doing, right? And it's you got to look at it from an anthropological mind frame where you're not applying all of your baggage to the situation. Like, this is stuff that was thousands and thousands of years ago.
The difference in how they look at the genders now, or at least if you were just to select two, the male and the female, the way that they treat that whole thing, even South America, every corner of the planet, man, if that even be a thing, that they've looked at females differently, and you can see a big change with that patriarchal push. That it's all by design, the different people, and apparently this is a phase that's ending now. It's ending. We're getting into a more feminine energy. If that be the way that you word that. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties, but hey, man, we're at a great place to wrap this up.
This is awesome.
Yeah, man,
I think I was able to squeeze in a couple, some radical feminism out of there from an anthropological perspective, because that's if you watch Amon and you're confused about what the satire is, it's like, if you're in that mindset, you're not in any place to understand the satire that he's getting at, which means you can't go back to Lucian and understand what Lucian was saying, which means you can't go back in time, and because you're missing the jokes that were important to this culture. You're missing the radical perspectives. You're missing the conflicts and stuff that were taking place that contextualizes all of what he's saying. Right? So if you're just excluding all the context, you're not doing yourself any favors by having all sorts of silly opinions about Amon's satire. Lady Babylon is a satire channel mocking you and mocking anybody who challenges what he's saying. Like, he will mock people. He's mocking his audience directly to their faces for not understanding his references and not getting in this and not being able to put themselves in this place and getting triggered and getting upset about things,
or at least the ones getting triggered by. A lot of people are receiving the messages, and but there's other.
But the thing is that
resistance,
So a lot of people, it takes a lot to receive. You can just because you're not triggered doesn't mean you're fully gathering what's going on, the nuance of the performance, right? It takes even under the first understanding to recognize that what you're seeing is performance art, to understand how to categorize the performance art as satire, right? It takes that first leap.
I've said performance art just describing the show, in the past.
That's because that's what he's doing, is performance art. And he's in a long tradition of philologists doing this particular type of performance art, right? Friedrich Nietzsche did exactly what Amon did with his books. right? Like Friedrich Nietzsche was a philologist.
You have to tell it in this kind of way for it to work, you know, and that's just.
Yeah, and you have to challenge your audience. You have to expose their confusion. You know what I mean? The more confused your audience is, the more that the conversation it starts to happen, right? And you know, how often does somebody chime up and you know, anytime you see long strings of comments, how often does somebody say, "Oh yeah, Lady Babylon, the satirical channel on YouTube," or Amo and Hillman, you're upset about a satirist doing satire, right? Like how often does that happen? Very rarely, very, very rarely, right? So anytime you see people who have, you know, hour-long videos saying Amo and Hillman's, you know, wrong about this or that, it's like, well, you did your hermeneutics wrong because you didn't account for the fact that he's doing performance art and satire. So you're treating this as though it's something else that it's not, and that's, you know, that's making your understanding of the situation, you know, it jokes on you, right?
Right.
You need to read more Lucian. Like, if you read more Lucian, you wouldn't have this problem.
Dude, I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been like just an explosive interview for sure. We're gonna have to have you back on. Is there a link you want to post in the chat real quick?
Yeah, my brother's in the chat. He'll throw you know, his link down in there and shit. So yeah, this was a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you having me.
Dude, yeah, thank you.
You know, I was trying to make this entertaining, and I'm in character doing performance art. So all of the technical difficulties and glitches, that was just me doing performance art. I'm a Luddite, right? So I'm performing Luddism, where I go, yeah, you know, just because we have technical difficulties doesn't mean we have to freak out and, you know, do all that. So part of my performance art is that it's like, you know, that if you have to explain a joke, it's not funny. I'm like, oh, well, what if I just explain the joke? Like, how funny can I make the joke explanation be? There you go. Perfect. That's my art now, is explaining the joke. So man, this was great, man. I appreciate it. I'll get you the link to the merch store so your audience can get 10% off and we can buy Marcel a sandwich.
Heck yeah. I'm going to have it in the description once I post the live. But dude, I'm going to go ahead and cut us here. Thank you guys so much. Again, we have the link to the Discord. If anybody's interested in that, it's waiting on you. And we will see you guys next time. Dude, thank you so much, Mandy.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan. My man. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm out. We'll see you next time.